I'd like to welcome you to this interview. I'm Francis Seeley from GlobalNet21, and we have with us today Cormac Russell, who is an authority on asset-based community development, which is a way of building up resilience in local communities. He's involved in nurture development and does a lot of work on community building across the world. And he knows that the role of local authorities can be quite crucial in enabling and helping community building. So first of all, Cormac, welcome. And can I ask you, what do you actually mean by asset-based community building or community development?
Good morning, Francis. Thank you. Sorry I can't physically be with you at conference today. What I primarily mean, what we primarily mean really is ABCD or asset-based community development is a perspective. It's a way of seeing the world. So that's what it is primarily. It's also an approach, a set of tools that can be used to, in the first place, promote place-based activity. So total place connection of citizens. So it's place-based. That's one of the distinguishing features. The second one is that it's citizen-led. So it's local people who are leading the action. The third distinguishing feature is that it's more focused on what's strong than on what's wrong. So it's capacity oriented, or what some people would call strength based. We call asset based because it's much wider. So it takes in the strengths of the people, but also the ecology and the economy. And the other feature is that it's very, very focused on inclusion and on social justice. So the perspective would be that it's by putting people in a place-based context in the lead, using what they have within and around them, that change can happen from grassroots up. And I suppose the other feature that I would mention is that it's relationship-based. So it's not about power and privilege in the traditional sense, but it's about connectivity and relationships.
I mean, if it's a bottom-up approach and it's building from below, is there a role for a local authority, if anything at all? Because they tend to impose from the top. Is there a role for local authorities?
Well, if we take it that local authorities are the stewards of local democracy, and we take it that at the heart of local democracy, the citizen is at the center, and that, you know, people own things that they create in a way that they can never own things that are created for them, then you can logic out that local authorities that are serious about growing democracy and not just being a business model would take the view that they have a great role to play. And I believe they do. I think they have a very important role in building up local democracies that are essentially a federation of neighborhoods. So getting serious about place-based working, I think they can be fantastic conveners. They can be facilitators and investors, and they're really good examples of that. You'll hear one a little later on from a colleague of mine.
I mean, how important is it as well for local authorities to provide a collaborative framework so that community groups know what agencies and organizations they can work with?
I think it's really important. That convening role that a local authority can provide is really powerful and really important. Being in a position to bring different parties together, but most importantly, to ensure that citizens are in the lead, is a very, very powerful and very important position in nurturing citizen-led and place-based approaches. And I think at a time when, despite the challenges economically, there's still a number of communities that have so many different programs and so many different initiatives happening in their local place that are so elementalized, so broken apart. It's critical not just to join things up, but also for somebody, local authorities may be in a position to do this if they choose to begin to think about a very different way of working. I think currently, and I just say this very briefly, I think currently the model is very much oriented towards identifying target groups, specifically named individuals with particular pathologies, and aggregating them together and then contracting second-tier organizations to service their needs. The asset-based approach, and local government could be a key convener in this, would suggest that it's far better to actually focus not on elementalizing people and aggregating them into need, but making, I suppose, creating a scenario whereby people can connect around their strengths. So community building and having a community builder in every neighborhood is something I believe every local authority could support and resource. And I think even with the current economic challenges, there's more than adequate resource available to do that. But communities will not connect together on their own. They need the support of a convener and a community builder at local level.
So local authorities have two roles specifically, probably more, but two specifically. One is a catalyst and pump primer to help local authorities to develop, and the other is to try and develop some local strategy where there is a joined up way of thinking and a joined up way of behaving.
That's right. And I think the third one is to do no harm. So to recognize that many local authorities are organized in a way that suits their particular function or particular silo. So we've some local authorities that have 30 and 40 different departments, and people don't organize their lives that way. People organize their lives around at human scale. So the role of local authority, I think, is to organize itself the way people organize their lives. And that's why examples like Seattle local government up to quite recently is a really good example, and their establishment of a Department of Neighborhoods that ensures that people can connect with their local government in a very different way to how most experience local government, I think is a powerful act of leadership and transformation. And I think perhaps if I were to issue a call to action, that would be the call to action for local government to organize itself the way people organize their lives, instead of expecting people to organize their lives the way services are organized.
But if local authorities are to behave in that way, there is quite a cultural change that has to take place within local authorities, isn't there? They have to think of themselves differently than they have in the past, where they've seen themselves as the controller and the prime mover.
That's right, that's right. And not alone think of themselves differently, but also think of communities differently. So it's a culture change both in local authorities. I would say third sector organizations would have to change. The relationship between them in terms of commissioning would have to change. So local authorities would be commissioning organizations to grow community instead of growing a client base. Local authorities would be thinking about themselves less around function and silo, more around neighborhood and place-based working. And they think about themselves as facilitators and less as service providers. And they think about the local authority less as a business and more as a vehicle for democracy. And I think finally they think of people not as clients of their services, but as citizens and democracy that they serve. And that is indeed a big culture shift. Because it's talking about leading by stepping back. It's talking about growing power by handing it away, and growing power at a very street level. And that's about community building. So yes, that does require a culture change in the organization. I think in communities, particularly communities that have been labeled as disadvantaged, it's a culture change in people thinking about themselves in a different way, thinking about themselves and each other as citizens, growing democracy rather than clients in pursuit of services solely. So it's a big culture shift.
Okay, Cormac, thank you very much. That's been really, really useful and given us an insight into the relationship between community building and local authority intervention. So thank you for that.
My pleasure, Francis. Thank you very much.